So I haven't been using AI for very long, but I've been working at Biblica for 4 years now, and through a conference that Biblica runs called Missional AI, we got in touch with Scott here, and since then I think our relationship has been very very well connected in the sense of they have what we need, and we definitely want to try our best to use it to the best of our ability. And so for the last year or so, we've been working with Chip and creating some custom tools and trying to get something unique out there. So again, I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, all the way at the bottom of the world. I can tell you that the day has gone very well, so I'm sure all of yours will go well as you starting out your day.
I can also vouch for James. I'm not from South Africa, but I'm stuck in South Africa.
Oh, that's amazing. And our second speaker is here, stuck in South Africa. So Don, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your organization, and then we will learn a little bit more.
Yes, I'm Don Barger. I'm the Director of Innovation and Artificial Intelligence for the International Mission Board, Southern Baptist, and we have about 3,500 missionaries serving around the world, and lead a pretty cool team to be able to do all sorts of really fun things with artificial intelligence and design thinking and digital engagement, different things. I just spent the last 4 days with James down in Cape Town. I will say Cape Town's a little bit nicer than Joburg. I've been stuck here with blood clots. I was here for another AI conference and been stuck here till another couple of days. So we lived overseas for 24 years, now based out of the US and lead a global team. Been working with Scott for a long time. I don't know,
Yeah, it's been a while.
Early in Chip days when we started working with you all, and just absolutely love the simplicity. I've probably built 300 or 400 bots using Chip. And one of my favorite is FaithBot, and it's now, I don't know how many users it has. It's pretty big.
Yeah, you should quantify though. I think it's like 150,000. So this is a look at FaithBot. I'll go ahead and share this. It's just faithbot.io. But yeah, tell us. So one of the things we'll do today is we'll talk a little bit about how to integrate AI, ideas for AI, and then things that you've seen work and don't work, right? Because I think there's a lot of questions about that. FaithBot's a great example. So, before we go further, Don, just tell us a little bit like the original impetus for that and what you've learned watching it. And then I'll kind of give a few other kind of framing here before we have you go deep.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because we do a lot of digital engagement, as I mentioned earlier. And in digital engagement, we basically run ads on social media, Google, different platforms around the world, and invite people into gospel conversations. And we have about 110 teams globally who are doing that. And we struggle with the biggest challenge we have is you'll run an ad and in some places you can spend very little money. Recently ran one in East Africa, spent like $20 over the weekend, and we had 3,900 people follow up. And so you quickly saturate your ability to respond to everybody. And I wish I could say all 3,900 of those are people who are really interested in talking about faith. But a good number of those are just people who are yelling at, cussing you out, and sending you porn and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so how do you filter through all of those people to figure out, okay, who's really interested in having conversations about faith? And so we're building this tool that would act as a kind of a layer that would make it would ascertain as whether or not this person is really serious. If they're just here to talk about, yelling at me, then we'll let the AI interact with them and suggest some resources they may or go to. But then the AI would then make that assessment. And if it says, no, this is actually a good conversation, then it would head to a human. And so then you protect your human resources to people who are just really interested. And so we were building that out. And one day I was at church and I was in a small group, and the guy was leading the small group, and he's a great guy, but he said something. I'm like, I don't think that's right. And I mean, I don't want to be the guy sitting there and go, this is heretical. I probably have a lot more theological education than he does, so I didn't want to flaunt that. I didn't want to say anything. But then I remembered I had FaithBot, and I went, oh. So I opened up FaithBot and I just typed in what he said, and sure enough, it was not correct. So afterwards, I went up to him and I said, hey, I've got this tool. It's on this little NFC card. If you'll just tap it on your phone, it'll open up this chat bot on your phone, and you can ask it questions and it'll actually ground everything you're saying in scripture. So you don't have to worry, like, did you say something wrong? You can also drop your notes in and it'll actually help you understand whether or not what you're saying was accurate or not. So I like that. And I thought, well, man, I bet other people would use this. So we built these chatbots and we deployed it right before Missional AI this year. And I gave out, like, I don't know, 150, 200 of these cards at Missional AI. And by the end of the week, we had 3,000 or 4,000 users. And then I speak a lot at churches and conventions and denomination gatherings and other mission agencies. And I'll always bring these cards and I'll see a spike. Like all of a sudden you'll see, 4,000 new users today. And it's because I'm out talking. And I use these cards. I just finished another conversation with a whole other group. And the question was, what do you do about the church? Because the church is not very innovative and they kind of were stick in the muds and don't really want to change. And it's unfortunate because all major changes in the world, all these huge major changes have come through the church. I mean, lots of innovations over the years. And so FaithBot is an awesome way to help people who are a little skittish on AI start using it and they go, wow, this is pretty good. And how is it doing this? And I don't want to tell them how easy it is, but it really gives them great answers, always grounded in scripture. And so for me, that's important. And I think that's how we have managed to get a lot more people from a biblical or from churches actually being a little more okay with AI.
No, that's great. Great background. And I think what we want to do today is get ideas or things people want to learn and use the experience James and Don have had integrating and using AI, because there's a lot of things it's good at. There's a lot of things it's not good at. And I think learning when to deploy it. For most of us, AI is not the goal, right? It's just another way to be able to have the conversations, to get the work done faster, to automate certain things, So I think we want to keep that in mind. Like we can go as deep as we want in AI, but really it's how are you going to get this integrated in a way people actually use it and actually work smarter? So let me, while we introduce kind of the speakers and the topics, I want to do one more waterfall here. This one, I want you to say which organization, if you're comfortable sharing, you're coming from. So all the attendees here in the chat, you can type where you're joining us from, and then one thing that you either hope to learn or are curious about. So that'll really help our speakers know, what examples or ideas to hit. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to type that in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'll tell you about a couple events that are upcoming that you might want to join us for. So here you can see my church coloring one. I got my coloring sheet ready there for my ChipBot. So I'm joining you today from Chip. Chip is is an application on top of large language models. So on top of OpenAI or Gemini or Anthropic, it's an application that gives you more power to control the conversation. So you can see the chats, you can make sure it answers in a way you want. Like Don said, in this case, we want it to answer, based on biblical responses or certain viewpoints. It also allows you to deploy it in lots of places. So via email, via voice, via Slack, into a website, lots of things like that. So you guys all got a chance to use that, build your own agent. It's free to use for your first 1,000 chats, and then it's a subscription starting at $29 a month. With Chip, we have what we call ChipCons. These are our user conferences. So I know we have a few friends from the Southeast joining us, and next Thursday is our conference, and one of our great speakers, Don, is going to be there, assuming he's able to fly back to the U.S., and we're going to have a table topic, kind of a table breakout session all about AI for churches. So if any of you can join in person, happy to have you do just that. So I'll put that in the chat as well. So now I should have stalled long enough that you guys can share your ideas. So on the count of 3, let's go ahead and share which organization you're joining us from, and then one question or idea. So 1, 2, 3, go ahead and hit it. Let's see what we got. We got North American Mission Board working to make sure they adhere to guidelines. Strategy for AI. Look, some shy people now that we're not talking about what we're drinking, maybe fewer people wanting to share. That's okay. But if you have ideas or questions, drop them in. So let's start the conversation. There we go. We're getting a few more in. Let's start the conversation. We're going to go over to James and hear a little bit about Biblica's journey. So tell us what Biblica does and some of the unique use cases you needed AI for. And then, you just shared this a couple of weeks ago. And like you said, it's actually gone faster or bigger than you thought, which is both good and bad. So walk us through first kind of Biblica, what you do. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar, but then we can talk about why AI and the goods and bads so far.
Perfect. Biblica is about 200 years old, or 215.
You look good. So you look good for 215, James.
Yeah, unless I do my best. I do work out. But looking back in the history of Biblica, it's gone through. It started in New York as giving Bibles to people like immigrating into the United States, and it's primarily focused on translation. So when I first started at Biblica, when we wanted to start with AI, the focus was AI in translation and assisting with the speed of translating a Bible, getting that 10 years of finishing a full Bible down to 3 or 5 years to finish a new translation. So currently Biblica has 100 translations that are available, with 50 being in Creative Commons, so freely available, and organizations can use it and print it or however they like. We do have majority languages, so for example, the NIV, we've got NVI, Spanish, Portuguese, and then a lot of European languages. But there's a big push within Biblica to focus on minority languages. And so our starting off with engagement with scripture using AI is currently with majority languages, but we want to focus on minority languages in the future. So how do we get very minor languages like Hausa or Shona, or no, those are still, there's a few million that speak those languages. But how do we get people to interact with AI to get that scripture? And so it's been a very interesting journey this past year with using Chip and AI, just to find out how to use it. We're still learning. This whole year has been figuring it out. And even though we released a small portion at the moment, the demand is very high.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think at Missional AI, hearing Biblica's work with translation, to me, that makes so much sense. Okay, AI is better, or faster at least, than humans, and maybe humans go back and improve it. But most of us probably are not translating Bibles, right? Tell us a little bit about the demand you're talking about with your current launch, and sort of how you're seeing using it. Like, what did you launch out to the organization, the public, and then what surprised you about it?
So it's been currently a week, and we've released it in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Hindi. And all we've done is we have a bunch of applications out there that focuses on study Bible material, very entry level. We're talking grade 3 reading level. We're trying to focus on providing study notes for frontline churches. This is not necessarily for Western audiences. It's very basic study notes. And we found the reason why we actually did the study notes and the study material is that it is extremely expensive to get study material in different languages and available. For example, my colleague in Cairo, it would cost her about $100 just to purchase a book, and it's only in English. And to get it to me in South Africa, it would be like $60. So getting access to study Bible material is extremely expensive. So Biblica created this resource, and now we've put it in Creative Commons. And because we put it in Creative Commons, it's now available in 9 languages already, because we have other translation organizations that are doing the translation with the material. And so we use that and put it in our AI chatbot. So the Hindi that we have, we didn't do the translation for that. Another organization did it and put it in Creative Commons, and now the community is just building on top of that.
And let me just jump in with a question there, because Don, I'm going to, if it's okay, show all the FaithBots. Is that all right with you if I show all the languages?
The screen's not big enough.
I don't think the screen's big enough. It's funny you talk adding the Shona, and I built the Shona. I spent like 2 hours in I spent 9 hours with a guy Saturday who's a Shona speaker. And we got to talking about faith toward the end of the day. And at the end of the conversation, when we're about to get out of the car, he's like, man, I just wish I had a place where I could just go ask all these questions that I have. And I built the Shona. I got up early Sunday morning and I built out the Shona version of FaithBot, and I pushed it to him. I just sent it to him, not push it. I sent it to him in a WhatsApp chat that morning, and I think he has shared it with lots of other people and he loved it. He was helping me critique like the language. Obviously I don't speak Shauna, but I built it in Shauna using some other AI tools that we built that now have a builder that builds faith bots in other languages. So it's kind of cool. And I have another tool that then you can go and interact with the chats of the person of the chat bot in another language, and you can ask it questions and query, like what are the common themes that we're seeing. So we use this in digital engagement. So we'll run a chat in a particular language in another part of the world, and then we have a faith bot interactor. So I can see the common themes of issues that people are asking about. And then when we do redirected targeted ads and digital engagement, we hit those particular topics. So we run ads on the topics that they've been asking FaithBot about. It's kind of fun.
I think one thing that's amazing with AI is that you don't have to speak Shona to make it in Shona, right? So like here you can see the instructions in English, but now it's talking in Burmese, right? And so the AI is able to switch things, which is pretty fascinating.
I would say that's less than best practice, as I might to get onto my intern for doing that. Because the best practice is when you build out the actual system prompt in the mother tongue language. So, and it's sort of like I speak Spanish fluently, but when I was learning Spanish, if you had asked me a question, I could answer your question and it would be technically correct, but
long pause. While his internet's coming back, I think one thing that's fascinating is how you can
you could ask me the same question.
Oh, there you go. We got you.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, if you
all right, we're going to mute Don for a moment while we get him back. But I'd be curious, James, to have you kind of share. I know you had a presentation, but real quick, like one thing with Chip, you can see the conversation. So in the last week or two, you've launched this and kind of looking at the results. What have you seen? Like, what are the kind of conversations and how has that changed maybe your work or how you're thinking about AI moving forward?
Yeah. So there was one thing that from the beginning, I had an idea about that has been confirmed by the conversations, and that is the way that we're creating these chatbots and the specific audience that we are targeting is that it's not the traditional ChatGPT crawled responses, which is a page or even longer or provides a massive amount of content. Instead, it's more of a conversation. So the way that I can actually just show, let me get to the slide.
Yeah, feel free to share your screen and we can kind of dive into how you built it. So we were talking about language a lot, but this is obviously has a lot of applications beyond language, just using it. So yeah, show us what we have.
What we found with the questions is that for some reason, the questions are extremely short. Like in some cases, they just say summary of Exodus, for example. And that's like the AI is trying to have to figure out what they're looking for. And so what I've tried to do with the prompt within Chip is to create the responses as short as possible. So I think I put it between 5 and 10 sentences to the max, because that increases the engagement of the person instead of a massive long paragraph. Unless they ask, can you give me a sermon? Can you give me additional verses? Then it will give a little bit more information. And what's happening in the background with Chip is that we are leaning a lot on the content, so the knowledge sources that we have available within Chip itself. And we've created a custom tool to be able to retrieve that information. And so it's using the Biblica study notes that we have within the knowledge base and the Bible verses, which are actually retrieved from our source. So it's actually getting it directly from our source text. It's not using ChatGPT for wherever it scrapes that content from. We're using our own source material for scripture because we're very focused on making sure that the scripture is as correct as possible. Although you will notice this is not the NIV, this is the NIRV, which is a reader's version, is simplified English. But what I wanted to emphasize in this is that I actually want the AI summary, which is the top gray part, to be more Biblica study notes. So it's referencing our content as much as possible. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is whatever chatbots that you're creating, I love the idea AI taking your content to create an answer and not making it up itself. And so the only way to do that is to provide it with as much content of your own as possible so that it leans on it. And I'm going to work a lot more on the prompt so that more of the answer is quotations, more verses. I think with the next one, let's have a look. So this one, it's got the verse twice, one in the summary and one is at the bottom. But I'm trying as much as possible to quote content that we have as ourselves. And what the AI is doing is just taking those verses and the content from the study notes and then making a summary around it. So yeah, that's something that we've been testing with, and with the people that are asking questions and starting to use it, we see because it's a bit shorter, it becomes more of a conversation than just here's the information and take it and leave. We want it to be a conversation and a lot more engaging. So
and if I can jump in, James, I'll just kind of, I think there's a couple things here to talk through with AI. So we heard the word like knowledge sources. So one thing we can think about with AI is it's trained on what we call world knowledge. So basically has anything that's publicly available through a few months ago on the internet, it knows about already. But because it knows all of that stuff, by default, it's going to take kind of the summary or average of all of that stuff, right? And you're not always sure where it's coming from. So you can augment the world knowledge with what I call professional knowledge, which is what your organization or your church or your company has. And it might be, private to you, might be, like James said, we have this translation, or it might be like, here's our opening hours and how we work and our HR policy, things that you want it to be able to know, but you don't want to share out to the world. And then there's a third type of information, which I think about as the individual user or builder, which is personal preference. Like I want my answers with bullet points or emojis or in Spanish or whatever it might be. So there's kind of these three buckets of like world knowledge, which you get out of the box, professional knowledge, which you add, and then personal knowledge or preference, which is what you specify. And I think I'll show Chip here just to show where this is. When you're building any kind of AI tools, you'll typically have what's called a prompt. These are kind of the instructions, right? So this is one that is kind of an executive assistant for Baptist churches. It's going to help write job descriptions, review bylaws, right? Like all the admin stuff for a church. So we're just telling the AI how to behave. In a way, we're pre-training it so that people who use it don't need to know about AI. So just imagine it's ChatGPT, but you're telling it exactly how to behave. And then you hand it off to your secretary, and that person can use it without knowing AI. So that's kind of the training. And then when we talk about knowledge sources, like James mentioned, that's like this, where you can add in websites and files and YouTube videos. And so you can train it quickly. So one really fun example as a nonprofit here in Fargo, where I am, and they actually have built an agent here that's trained on the IRS rules in the United States on non-traditional giving. So they're trying to help wealthy individuals donate cattle and land and cars and all these things that most financial advisors know nothing about. And so you can open up FM Phil and it's trained on those things and answers specifically to those answers, right? So that's an example of kind of what James is talking about. So I just wanted to fill that in and give some ideas. So curious, like if you want to talk through kind of the process, James, and what you, kind of what you would recommend for others, that would be.
Yeah, so let me go through a few slides and then hopefully it will help grow the conversation. So immediately when I'm thinking about the chatbots that we create, it's not a Leatherman multi-tool, the super tool that has absolutely everything that it can do so many things and it's really good at those things. So ChatGPT, it can give you code, it can give you pasta recipes, it can give you summaries and transcription and images and so forth. Our chatbots that we're creating specifically with Chip is very specific, and I like to call it as a single purpose AI. And I almost want to be as good as that knife that's on the Leatherman there. I want it to be very specific, very well made, and serve a purpose for the people that are actually chatting to the chatbot. And so the way that we do it is, of course, all our Bible scripture that we have available, along with our study notes, and then being able to provide Bible translations that actually aren't available everywhere. Because like Scott said, it does a scrape of the internet, it puts it in the LLM, but then what about new translations that come available? What about new knowledge? It doesn't have access to that. So we're hoping to be able to provide that within an AI. And so what we've done here is that we've got Chip as a user front end. Thank you, Chip, for creating all the functionality that's required for a chat conversation. But then with that, we got another organization called Prediction Guard, which we've grown a very close relationship with them. And so we've created a custom tool. So like in that knowledge base, there's those, or not that knowledge base, I think it's a little bit lower in the left-hand side. You can create a custom tool. as well as all of this is self-hosted. So we've got it within Prediction Guard servers, and then we've created AIs to be able to access our content, so our scripture and the study Bible content, so that when somebody says, I want to read James chapter 1, it can provide that directly from the source. And so we've only currently, these are our 3 study Bible applications. We've only just placed a menu item in the apps at the moment. We've done nothing else. We don't want to we don't actually want it to promote it. We just wanted to get a few people to chat with it. And we didn't realize the interest at the moment. So as soon as they click that menu item, it goes into each one of these, the relevant chats. And of course, these are just the normal features that are on the chip level that we can customize and make how we want. Scott, something that I did recognize is that people in the last week, we've had over 20,000 conversations at the moment. And what we've found is that people love to press the questions, those little bubbles. So on the Spanish one, it's and what is grace? They would press that and then they wouldn't continue with the conversation. It's fascinating that they're interested, they press it, they get the answer, and then they leave the conversation. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating. And I think, one thing you touched on that I'll share, and then maybe we'll have Don come speak to a little bit as well, is the privacy aspect, which always comes into play. And I kind of think about this as like 4 steps that you can take along the privacy journey. The first thing that I would recommend everyone do is make sure that your AI information is not used for training. So you can do this in ChatGPT if you have a paid plan. You just go into the settings, you check it off. If you're using Anthropic and you have a paid plan, it's not on by default. With Chip, nothing on Chip is used for training. So training means that anything I say, it's going to use for its next model, so that it's going to your information is not going to show up later. The second thing you can think about is what's known as, go ahead, Don, you got something else to add there? Yeah.
I'm just going to say, if you're not paying for something, you are the product. So
yeah, exactly.
You're paying, you're just giving away your data, which is gold and oil for 2026.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can do that with any tool. You just have to do it. And that's obviously they've made their default not private because they want the data, right? The second thing you can do is there's options called zero data retention. That basically means the information is deleted from the large language model. So large language model, just think about that as the computer, basically. So OpenAI has a computer, Anthropic has a computer, Google or Gemini has a computer. You can, on certain models, like Gemini, it allows you to use what's called ZDR, zero data retention. That means nothing is saved. On Anthropic, if you're using that, it is automatically deleted after 30 days. So for some people, that's enough to say, hey, our data's there, but it's going to go away. Exactly. And ChatGPT is forced to keep them. The third level of privacy, as you get more private, is you could actually run something like Chip in your own infrastructure, right? So this is where your IT team can go in and actually control everything. You can, with Chip, you can use it in your own infrastructure, but we still leverage the public models, so like Gemini or Anthropic, as well as some open source models. The most secure that James talked about is what's called a private LLM. So that's where you actually are essentially training, fine-tuning your own model, and nothing leaves kind of your bubble. So you can control that world knowledge. You can really control what's in the world knowledge as well as where data goes. So I wanted to take that little detour just because I think it's interesting. What we see most people doing is just working their way up. Like get something that's not private information and start using it. And then as you find new use cases, you might work up the stack. And yeah, Don, thanks for the shout out. We just completed our SOC 2 compliance, which only IT people care about, but they care about it very deeply. It just means that data is safe with Chip. But Don, I'd love to use this to lead back into you, because not only are you doing FaithBot, but you're working with lots of churches in workshops. And I think talking to pastors and administrators and like on the ground, I'm really curious how you kind of bridge this international, talking to hundreds of thousands of people, with the Mississippi Southern Baptist Convention, who really is not sure how to even use AI yet. How do you kind of see that?
We've done that. Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia. We're doing it with WMU, which is another organization within the Southern Baptist, with our humanitarian aid department called Send Relief. And then I was in South Africa, been here for 2 weeks now, leading something for another organization called Teach Every Nation. And I was doing AI training for them. And I think there's a hunger, and it's changed. Like 2 years ago, like religious organizations. The first time I was in a meeting at our company, it was an hour-long meeting. 1 hour and 25 minutes into the hour-long meeting, we've only talked about, oh, woe is me, the sky's falling. How are we going to protect against AI? And I'm saying, hey, look at all these possibilities that we have for AI. Yes, we got to be safe. Yes, we got to be secure. No, we shouldn't just use ChatGPT and let everybody put whatever they want in there. So we have very strong policies about AI. We have data security policies. We have a OI information security team, a legal team. I work with all of them, but we can do it in a way that it is safe and secure. And I think we made kind of a flip the switch between the worry to now being, okay, yeah, there's things out there that are concerning, but AI is a technology. This pen is a technology. This pen can be used for really bad stuff and has been. People have been killed through the stroke of a pen. So it doesn't mean we don't use pens, because pens can be bad. So we have to use technology ethically, and we have to use AI ethically. And so we built out that framework that we can do that in. So I do speak a lot. I love walking through this with people who are very, very skeptical. And again, this is where FaithBot just opens up so many doors that they look at and they start playing with it and they go, wow, this is actually really good. And it's grounded. And I think that has been kind of a door opener in some of the other things that we do that just save people so much time on just the administrative burdens that they're doing. So I think people are a lot more open to AI today than they were 2 years ago. I will tell you, AI is coming for jobs. So like if you're worried that AI is going to take jobs, it most certainly will take jobs. And we used to say AI will take the jobs for the people who don't know how to use AI. And that's not the case. It will take jobs. I can give you examples of jobs that have been eliminated because of AI, but it's going to create jobs. So 60% of the jobs that exist in the world today did not exist in 1940. So there's always this churn of professions. And so, yes, there are going to be people affected negatively, but there's going to be lots of upside as well. So that's not an encouragement if you're the guy who, or a lady who writes copy for a newspaper, but if you haven't heard, newspapers are kind of going away. And I think AI is going to accelerate some of those demises.
You're saying your grandparents were not influencers like mine? They weren't TikTokers or something?
So like 125 years ago, there was a job of people who shoed horses in New York City. 25 years later, I don't know that any of those jobs really existed at that level. And that's the same thing that's happening now.
Yeah. My grandmother taught shorthand, so I definitely know that. But I'm curious, you have built what we call an HQ, so basically a bundle of apps for churches. I'm going to share my screen, and I would love to have you talk through these, because when people hear about, oh, AI can help admin, can help save time, let's like make it more tangible. So like of these apps that you've built and shared with churches around the US, like which ones do you think have made a big impact that other people should try to build? Or we'll give you a link if you want to purchase this whole bundle from Don, you can do that as well.
I mean, like looking here, you've got FaithBot is obviously there. I like the Sermon Research Pro because what happened was in May, I got an email and it was like, hey, for $9.95 a month, we'll give you any sermon on any topic within 5 minutes. And I just had this feeling over me because I totally was opposed to that. And so I built this tool to help pastors ethically use AI to help them do research and find topics, or they've got a topic and they want to test it and do the research of where else in the Bible stuff like this is talked about. So it explicitly is not here to write your sermon for you. So if that's what you're wanting, you need to go subscribe to the $9.95 a month and really feel guilty and go and repent. But this is really just a research tool that puts the access to building these resources into anybody. And like before people I've spoken, people get upset about it. And I'm like, when I was in seminary, we had books that were outlines of the Bible. Like I could go pull a book off the shelf and it would give you an outline for a sermon. So this is not new. It's just kind of a new way to engage with old stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, there's some research stuff in there, like academic research, and then the Engage Lostness series. This is one of my absolute favorite. I just absolutely love it. So like if you want to share your faith with someone of another faith, you can go on and it'll respond as that person. So it kind of builds out the persona for that other person. And so it just helps you be able to understand. I lived in Latin America and for 24 years. And what I found was people would say they were maybe Catholic, and they really were not Catholic. They hadn't gone to mass in 25 years or 35 years. They were never, they were not practicing their faith. And so this was a way that you could kind of be able to share with them in a way that you understand. The AI would build the persona so that you would know how it's being received by that person. It's kind of a cool little tool we build. So yeah, lots and lots of tools that we built for church stuff, and we'd love to build some more. And I do think it's super easy to build stuff on Chip, and I just love the fact that we can build stuff so quickly. I want to also add a boy to James, because we do the same thing. We have a private chip within Prediction Guard. So if privacy is of utmost importance to you and your people's lives are on the line, or if you've got insanely sensitive data, then there is the ability to self-host this and other models, but they're never going to perform as much as the cutting edge models like you're finding in the public side of Chip. That's where you'll find the really, really high performing models.
That's amazing. Well, let's talk about actually getting people to use this stuff. So I'm going to drop a link in here to Don's HQ, and you can grab all of his apps there if you want. But James, I'm curious, like when you are trying to roll this out, how are you getting people on board? Like, how do you do the people management or the change management part? Because I think that's often the hardest part of AI is actually, this isn't super hard to use. That's kind of why it's so magical, but getting people mentally on board can be a little challenging.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, because I mean, since working with this, we started with another service called ManyChat, and we integrated it with WhatsApp. That lasted about a couple of months. We got people testing it, and then we got banned from Meta. So our whole service that we had available is just gone forever. That number was completely gone. So Meta is definitely, there's ways around it and so forth. I've chatted to Don about it, but I don't want to be restricted in that sense. So we started to play around with the chip side and create these versions to be able to get tested from leadership within Biblica. Because before we even can send it out there and get buy-in from actual users, we have to make sure that leadership is happy with the way that things are getting answered, and we're not putting a reputational risk because it's going out to the public. And I completely understand that. I'm way more risky. Remember, I am South African. We have a few famous South Africans that have done greatly dangerous things in the world. So we have this reputation of just going out and doing stuff. And I got to a point, we are definitely risky. I've definitely come to the conclusion where it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's okay. And we will learn from that. And because we released last week and we had it on these apps without letting any of the users know, I need to mention that we just made it as an option to get a few conversations. We have learned so much from user feedback. I actually understated or underestimated how important that user feedback. It might not be a great experience for them in the beginning, but it's going to help us so much along the road just to improve the experience and how we do it. So we've had to go over those speed bumps to get to where we are today. And I'm okay with it not being perfect at the moment, and it's rolling out, and we will continually improve. And I do need to mention one thing, and that is, as soon as you scale and you release it out there to the public, you need to have, I feel you need to be on board and seeing what's happening in the conversation. So Don, thank the Lord for Don. He gave me this great advice to just put all your chats in the chatbot and have that administration load just a lot less. I have somebody now that just goes through that chat and goes through and asks questions. How's it going? What problems are people experiencing? Because to go through 20,000 conversations, I don't know, but it can take quite a long time, and you will miss important things that are actually happening with the engagement. So it's taken a while, but we've gotten through the speed bumps.
Yeah, and I think to highlight that, what James is talking about is, you have all these chats, and this is we can actually export those right to a spreadsheet. Or the other tool that a lot of schools use is what we call tags. So you can actually monitor for certain topics. So a school might use this, or even Sunday school, and it's like, are people asking inappropriate things, or they're asking topics that are sensitive? They're asking about politics, right? We want to flag those so we can review them. But you can even just go in and ask questions against the chats. And Don, I don't know if you played around with this. How much are you doing with voice?
I think you're in a non
Yeah, I'm in the
yeah. But so in the one that we deploy, don't pull it up because it's got some
exactly,
stuff in there. But we do put in there, like, I want to make sure that if someone asks about suicide, is this chatbot giving the right answers? And so there are several different topics, and they don't have to say the word suicide. If it thinks that AI doesn't think, I know that, or someone says that doesn't think, but if it thinks that someone is going to self-harm, then it will tag that. And then I review, and you can set it where it'll like message you or send you a message that say, hey, somebody has said this, but I always want to go back and make sure that it's responding well. Someone asked, how do you know that it's always responding well? Well, we did a bunch of tests beforehand, like red teamed it, had a spreadsheet. When you ask this, what do you get? And we spent months building out that master system prompt to make sure that it is very well grounded. And then any time that it asks some sensitive topics, I will always go back and read those just to make sure that we're not getting bad information. And I can say I've been pretty happy with how it does respond.
Yeah. Nicholas has a great question. Like, what do you do if it responds poorly? So I know, like, with the tags feature, what schools can do is you can actually stop the conversation or give a default response, like word for word. So like a lot of schools would do, I'm not here to talk about that. Make sure to contact 988 if you are thinking about self-harm. I don't know, Don or James, how have you thought through that?
So I built it where, and even we do this in a lot of prompts, a lot of prompting. So there's some hard coding that I just put into prompts that says, anytime somebody asks, we built several website chatbots for like a university. So the university, all the information on their website is hard to find. So we built a little chat bot that just pops up on the bottom of the screen, and they can ask questions, but like, I don't want it ever to even come close to hallucinating about some of these things. I just say, if anybody ever asks about financial aid, do this. So it takes a little longer, and I just put that in my notes section. I have this whole long list of hard coded things, always respond like this.
Yeah.
And so then you give the AI a chance to do something poorly. When it comes to self-harm and those type of things, the same thing I build in. If someone asks about this topic, always respond like this. And so it's not generating text. It's not generating response. It's just giving you verbatim what I tell it to get.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the future in my mind is, go ahead, James. Yeah. Wait, what you're doing?
Yeah, sorry. I was even testing today, and I was noticing that a few of the responses would respond scripture incorrectly in the way that we didn't want it to do it. For example, at the beginning of a few chapters, there's a heading just before the verse. And so our API is calling that verse, and then it's putting the heading into the scripture. And so I have to go into the prompt and specify, this is an example of what it's doing currently or what it's receiving from the knowledge base. I want it to look this way. So it's refining it. And in the last week, I've just been asking it questions to try break it. And that ripe helps me a lot. I sometimes just go to ChatGPT and say, give me a ripe dash Q for this kind of chatbot. And then I start playing around with that. It gives me a solid start so that I can actually play around and see what answers are actually coming through.
Yeah. And I put that in the chat.
I find a lot of playing.
Yeah, I put that in the chat. So I think anyone who's doing prompting, and Don just put the link in, which is great, but you can think through like telling the AI what role it should be, what its instructions are, any parameters, like don't talk about this, do talk about this. And then I think the easiest way to train these things is with examples. So here's an example of a good answer. Here's an example of things we don't want to talk about, right? So there's connections AI finds that we don't even know, right? We can't explain it, but if you show, don't tell, it'll perform really well. And I know Don's going to abuse this, but I have to show it. So today we have a few new things coming out of the gate. And one of them I'm really excited about is now voice mode. And so you are now going to be able to talk to FaithBot on the phone or on the app. You just click the microphone. Hey, FaithBot.
Hey there. It's good to hear from you. How can I help you?
I'm doing some research on Jesus in the temple. What can you tell me?
Absolutely. I'd love to share that story with you. This comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. When Jesus was 12 years old, his family went to Jerusalem.
So there you go. So this is now, this will be launched today on Chip. I'm really excited to see what Don does. We have to make sure we have usage payment in before Don sends 100,000 people to our API, but really excited to have you all use that. And I know a lot of you have great experience. I want to make sure we highlight a few folks and ask if there's any other questions. So like Rob, I know you're in Chicago. You've worked a little bit with ELCA and other nonprofits. Like really curious what you've seen in sort of this adoption piece, because you guys do a lot on sort of the front end of strategy adoption and like what's been hard or easy.
I think with the nonprofits we work with right now, I think there's a big just general need for strategic planning, fundraising planning, communications planning is the big need that we see. And then we also see needing like tools and applications around that fundraising process, whether it's like stewardship, whether it's grant writing, whether it's campaign planning, event planning. Those are the things we see. And then I'll turn it over to Katie, who's new to the group. And so she comes from nonprofit and now leads our nonprofit group. So Katie, if you have any feedback.
Yeah, we're super excited to working with Growth AI. We're a division of Growth AI, Mission Engine, and we're taking all the fundraising HQ, working with Chip and Scott, and launching the nonprofit HQ. And that'll help churches with their fundraising base. But before you can establish a fundraising base, you need to establish strategy. And we're able to go in and help them create that strategy and launch it into a development plan, into stewardship plans, into how to work with and cultivate, making sure that your events are aligning with your mission and delivering the message that you want from beginning to end. So that's our nonprofit HQ, but also the strategy and the help behind it, as well as AI readiness and AI readiness and AI strategy as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think like grants are such a great example of AI, right? Like think about changing from 1,500 characters to 1,000 characters. Like we talk about losing jobs. Copy editing grants is not something we should care about losing, right? This is not the best use of your brain, and such a good use case for AI. Where you can have bigger impact. I think it's so exciting. I don't know, Kelly, if you're willing to go off mute at North American Mission Board. I love how they're thinking about AI to just getting started, sort of like identify and qualify church planters. I think it's really fascinating use of AI. So if you're there, Kelly, this is off the cuff. So you are. Okay, great.
But yeah, we are just getting started. We're just beginning to build a solution with the Chip AI, and we're very excited about it. Looking to use the solution to help vet potential church planters and direct them off to the next steps depending on their readiness. So we're very excited about it. We think it has great potential.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I just love highlighting all these use cases. So what I'm going to do is take the chat and some of those ideas you all had, and I'll put that into the blog post with the video replay. And so hopefully you can take some of these ideas, just throw them at the app generator on Chip. It'll, build the first version for you, and then you can iterate, because the hardest part is the blank page, right? Once you have something, you can say, oh, that's not right. I need to add a website, I need to add a Bible verse, whatever. And that's what you can do. So James and Don, I'd love to have you just final words here on like encouraging, how you can think about encouraging people to try. Like what's a good first step out of this session?
I think the first step is just getting in it and playing with it and trying to build a tool. I'm also like James, if you're not willing to fail, you probably shouldn't be in innovation, because you have to make a lot of options. You got to try a lot of stuff before you find something that works. The other thing that we didn't talk about, and we don't have time to talk about, but there's so much more powerful stuff than just the very simple stuff. Yes, you can add PDFs and you can add Word files, and you can add podcasts and YouTube videos to your knowledge source. You also can go to API into huge sources like data from the Census Bureau or something, and suck in insane amounts of data using an API call. And so there's a lot more advanced things you can do with Chip. It's not just like creating a MyGPT and ChatGPT. There's a lot of other options where you can add to it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We just launched one for a client that's doing legislative search. So they want to track all the bills that are being discussed in DC and just see like, what do we need to be lobbying about, right? And so like, just think about what what can we not understand as humans? Because there's too much of it, right? That's a great
I
use
don't
for
think
AI.
there's any bills being discussed right now, so I don't think they have the much to look at.
Exactly. All right, James, final word to you. Tell us what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I think
out.
to hopefully encourage you, I would definitely recommend to just speak with your teams to figure out what is your, like the image I showed, what is that knife that you want to create, that very specialized knife that is going to be extremely unique compared to people just going on ChatGPT and using it. An experience that is very tailor-made for the audience that you're trying to give it to. It not only just like general users or people in the ministry, but even people in your organization. Because you can create, like Donna's done 100 now for specific reasons. And like he said, just create one, move on to the next one, move on to the next, just grow and fail and learn and just keep on playing. I love playing with that.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not gonna hurt anything. You can decide when to launch when ready. I love Don's stat. He had 30 chatbots on a flight. So as you hopefully saw this morning, easy to do. Really excited to share resources and connect this group with one another. So if you want to meet anyone who's on this call, just let me know. I'll put the blog post up today and send it out tomorrow, so you can make sure make sure you guys all get the email with the replay and the ideas. So send out what you're building. We'll share it with the group, and so great to have everybody here. And exactly like Nicholas said, you can keep stuff in-house, you can do it external, decide access and privacy and all of that. So all this is possible. I think the first step is, like Don said, being willing to play and try. So thanks, James and Don, for building, for sharing. Hope you both, James, you don't need to leave South Africa, but hope, Don, you do. And hope to see some of you in Greenville very shortly. So appreciate the time and the
tomorrow
attention.
night. I'm there. I'm driving. I'm flying out tomorrow night.
Safe travels, and thanks for the time, everybody. Have a great week.
Everyone.